Hello, it's Bailey and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing kind of like a recommendations video. I don't usually do these because I'm bad at remembering what books are about or like what happens in books. Once I read them, it's like in and out. I like to move on to the next thing. That's why I reread so much, and a lot of these books I have reread. But I got the idea to recommend these because in my February TBR, I walked you through that I've been trying to read books based on when they were published in a few different categories. And the first of those categories was published before 2010. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today, is my top 10 favorite books I've read that were published before 2010. I actually think the newest book on this list was published in 2008. So there you have it. I am going to go in order of oldest published to newest published, so let's get into it. I'm not much of a classics reader, and most of the stuff I had to read in school I did not enjoy, but something I read in school and did enjoy is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And I actually had to read this 3 times in school. If you didn't know this, I transferred schools in the middle of my high school career. I transferred schools my junior year when my mom got remarried. So I had read this my freshman year and sophomore year, which is already a lot for like one school to have a book as required reading. And then I transferred schools and my new school was reading it again my junior year, and I was like, I know this book front to back. I do think the best way to describe this book is the first little paragraph of the synopsis on the back here, so I'm just going to read that to you. They are an unlikely pair. George is small and quick and dark of face. Lenny, a man of tremendous size, has the mind of a young child. Yet they have formed a family, clinging together in the face of loneliness and alienation. So it is kind of like a found family situation, and I do love this story. It probably still would make me cry if I reread it today, and it's like the shortest thing ever. I don't even think it's 100 pages long. Just over. This copy I have is 107 pages. Next is another book I actually read in school, and it is Night by Elie Wiesel. I read this actually in a journalism class, but this is a World War II story, and we follow this young boy, and it's actually the author recounting his childhood. This is his like true story, I believe. But something in this story that really just stands out to me, we're following this young boy as he's like getting sent to concentration camps, and what stands out to me in this book so much in my mind is this scene where they're like marching the enslaved people through the snow, and our main character does not have shoes, and so his story of walking and marching through the snow for days without shoes is just like ingrained in my mind. I did reread this sometime after I graduated, but I don't remember exactly when I reread this. But in terms of like World War II stories, I really like this one. I did try to read another book written by him, and I didn't enjoy it as much, but this one I think is amazing. It is also translated work. I probably should have been mentioning what year these were published. Of Mice and Men, I believe, was 1937, and Night, I believe, was 1950. But this next one is actually a book that I just read in January, and it was published in 1980, and it is The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. This is a true crime book talking about the story of Ted Bundy. That's what it is. It's amazing. Anne Rule actually knew Ted Bundy, so it is like an interesting perspective, but I really super enjoyed this one and would definitely recommend it. I've said before, I think this will make it onto my favorite books of 2022. Then something I have to include because it's a childhood favorite, I considered not, or just giving this like an honorable mention because it is not an adult book. I wouldn't even consider this like middle grade. Like, this is a children's chapter book, but you're gonna know as soon as you see this why I had to include it. This first one was published in 1992, and it is Judy Jones. Judy Jones is 100% what got me into reading. I love this series so much. R.I.P. Barbara Park. But I know that this series gets a lot of flack. We're following a kindergartner as she goes into kindergarten, and just like her telling the story of her life. They're all pretty funny, but this gets a lot of flack because it is like purposefully bad grammar. Like, she doesn't talk in correct sentences. So people say that this isn't teaching kids good language skills, but I love the series so much. Mabel will definitely be reading these. I had to include it. Then published in 1993, this book is probably one of my most reread books, and it is The Giver by Lois Lowry. I'm not sure if this is, but I would consider this like the OG dystopian book in my mind. It's technically a utopia, but I just love the discussion of like almost like knowledge is power in this book, and if you haven't read The Giver, I would 100% recommend it. It's, again, a fairly short book, a modern classic, if you will, and I definitely would recommend not sleeping on this one. I think it holds up so well, and you should read it. Then, published in 1999, I have The Perks of Being a Wallflower. This one definitely warrants a reread from me. I think I read this like my freshman year of high school, right before the movie came out, and then I reread it after the movie came out, but it's not very fresh in my mind, but I just remember loving this so much. Again, short book. A lot of these books are not very long. I also think this is one of the first books I read that really talked a lot about mental health, and it's just a good coming of age story. I'm definitely going to move this to the top of my reread list, and also the next book I have is something I think that warrants a reread as well. Published in 2003, I have The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I just remember that this book made me so emotional, and it is like a friendship story set in Afghanistan, but other than that, I don't remember much of like how we got from one thing to the other, or like kind of how the narrative was told. I just remember how this book made me feel, and I think it could make me feel it again because I don't completely remember the story. Then, published in 2005, I have The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. This is like the most hyped book I've probably ever seen. I feel like everybody has read this book, but it is so worth it. Another World War II fiction, but this is a YA story, and if you haven't picked this up by hearing every single person ever talk about this, you definitely should. This next book I'm willing to claim as my favorite book of all time. It was published in 2007, and Danielle from Book Cara recently read it on my recommendation, and I think you should as well. And it is Unwind by Neil Shusterman. I do have the old covers. These have like new covers that I think came out like maybe 5 years ago, maybe longer than that honestly at this point, but I do have the original covers of the 4-book series. And this is like a sci-fi political dystopian young adult series. It basically follows the premise of like unwanted teenagers. Basically their parents can sign an unwind order, and every single body part is donated, so they're not killed, that's how it is allowed, but every single part of their body is donated for science and for like people can purchase body parts basically. So there's just a lot of like questionable morality in this, and that's why I say it's political, because there was obviously like a wartime, not really war, but like a time when they were deciding to pass this law, and it's so interesting. I love it so much. Again, I do think I've reread The Giver more than I've reread this series, but I have reread this series many of times. And lastly, published in 2008, another series I'm working through rereading right now. I have reread the first 2 books recently, and that is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. A classic, truly. Honestly, if you're not picking up on this, I really love dystopian books, and again, this is like an OG dystopian, and to me, it really does live up. If you haven't read The Hunger Games yet, please do. Please do. Kayla, I'm talking to you. Please read The Hunger Games. But there you have it. That's my list of my favorite books published before the year 2010. I'm hoping to expand on this every single month this year. Based on how I'm trying to build my TBRs, I should be reading at least 1 book published in this category. So definitely let me know down below if you'd like me to do this in any of the other categories. The other categories I tried to fill are from 2010 to 2019, which I think would probably be the next most interesting. And then I tried to do either a 2020 or 2021 published, so you know, a recent backlist. And then I tried to do one published in 2022, so a new release. But thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!